Putin is facing struggles both at home and the battlefield. So I want to get your take on him and what might be next. Is there perhaps some sort of off-ramp, some sort of victory he can claim to wind this down, or do you think he's committed all in? And if his future, how does the rest of the world re-engage with him and Russia whenever this conflict might end? Or are they now going forward, as long as he's in charge, Cuba or North Korea?
Well, I think the first thing is we need to dispel the myth of what Donald Trump called the savvy genius strongman. This is not a savvy genius. He's not behaving like a savvy genius. He's irrational. And he's behaving irrationally because he's fallen into what I call the dictator trap, which is the fact that to stay in power, dictators do things that ultimately and eventually cause their downfall because they construct fake realities, and then they make mistakes based on their belief in those fake realities. When you think about what Vladimir Putin gets on a daily basis in terms of information, he's been in power for 2 decades. People who cross him lose power and might see their families fall off balconies. So it's a very, very dangerous situation to be in. And I think the real question here, as you pose, is what's next? So I think that there's going to be a pariah status for Russia for the foreseeable future, and I hope that's the case. I think it's important also that the oligarchs around Putin know that this is not a temporary change. That this is genuinely the new way of the future, that they will be isolated. They will not be sailing their yachts around the Mediterranean. They will not be stashing their cash in offshore bank accounts easily. They will not be buying up property in Belgravia in London. And as soon as they get that message, as soon as their lives become significantly more Russian, I think that provides the end game in which Vladimir Putin can be forced out of power by people who have greased the wheels for him for the last 2+ decades.
I want to take a question to Brian. This is David Ignatius. Brian, I'm curious whether you see any cracks in the inner circle around Putin. I don't mean the oligarchs who depend on him for patronage, but I mean the Siloviki, the security services that really shield his regime. Do you see any evidence that those people who do have the power to make changes in Russia are moving toward action?
I don't see evidence, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the reason for that is because these things often convey themselves in tipping points. So once somebody moves against a dictator, it's an extremely risky thing to do on their own. But once there's an environment in which multiple people think we can do this, that's when it moves very, very quickly. I mean, when you predict things like the Arab Spring, I mean, nobody thought Ben Ali would face, collapse in late 2010. In a matter of days, he did. So even though we don't have evidence of this, I think there are people around Putin, not just the oligarchs, who are understanding this is a fundamental geopolitical shift and a generational shift. And the more that they understand that their fates are intertwined with Vladimir Putin, the more they're going to push him to actually end this war. And I think that has to be the game plan. The information space is crucial here, too, because it is something where Vladimir Putin is going to continue to miscalculate. He has constructed a fake reality around himself. He has surrounded himself with people who don't criticize him because of fear. And he doesn't actually understand, I think, what's going on. So you have to deal very carefully with the understanding that this is not a fully rational man you're dealing with. And therefore, when we look for signals that he may be on the way out eventually, I think that may be optimistic in the short run, but it will happen quickly. It will not happen in some sort of slow burn with lots and lots of signs before everyone moves against him.
So, Brian, I'm curious. I want to get your take on something, sort of clarifying moment in the United States and the West that this war has provided. When General McCaffrey was risking his life for this country, when he was fighting across the world and defending America and all that we stood for, he had to deal with useful idiots from the left that tried to preach a moral equivalency between the Soviet Union and the United States of America, between Mao and the United States of America. Now, General McCaffrey and others are having to deal with useful idiots from the right. And I think one of the most shocking things I've seen, some of those useful idiots on the right actually didn't parrot Russian disinformation on Ukrainian biological labs. They actually were on the cutting edge. I read it first from a useful idiot here, and then a week later, I heard the same thing coming out of the mouth of a Russian general, which, of course, was a tip of the hat for us to expect future chemical weapons attack. I'm just curious, with all of your studying about authoritarianism and the fact that, unfortunately, too many people in this country actually are attracted to Putin-style authoritarianism. What's your reaction to what you've seen?
Well, I think we have two different struggles that are highly linked. There's a domestic struggle between democracy and authoritarianism, and there's a geopolitical struggle globally between democracy and authoritarianism. And we need to decide right now to be on the right side of both of those fights because they're linked. The people who are pushing for authoritarian attempts to overturn elections in the United States are also willing to countenance Vladimir Putin, to provide excuses for him. And I think this is something where, again, the geopolitical moment has come. We have to decide. And, you know, there are a lot of people in the United States who have long thought, oh, perhaps we can accommodate Vladimir Putin, perhaps we can accommodate China. I think it's time to decide whether we stand with democracies or stand with dictatorships. And the longer you stand with dictatorships, the more they're able to burn you later. And I think this is something that people are finding out the hard way. I have been arguing this for the last many, many years. And I think it's something where there's a wake-up call that's happened in Ukraine. And I hope the wake-up call goes beyond the borders of Ukraine and starts to actually change things in the rest of the world and how America relates to authoritarian despots, not just abroad, but also those who would be tyrants at home.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.